Good morning, everyone. And I want to thank the organizers at the Plant-Based Treaty for inviting me to be here today to talk about this topic that is, well, as you have seen from the environmental perspective, is really important. But actually, from the health perspective, it's also very important too. And you'll see that there are many things that are interrelated. So before we delve into the double burden of malnutrition, I want to show you this slide. Here it's a summary of the different impacts that our food system, this livestock-centered food system, has on our health. So we have the direct consumption and the problems that we have by eating animal products, but this is only one part of it. We have all these indirect consequences on our health because of, as we have seen, all the resources that animal agriculture use, and also how all these foods are produced. So we have the, in relation to all this inefficiency, we have the contribution to our food insecurity and undernutrition, which climate change also makes it worse. And then we have the health consequences of climate change. Then we have the health consequences of all the environmental pollution that animal agriculture causes. And then, because of the crowded and filthy conditions we keep the animals, the habitat destruction caused by the deforestation that animal agriculture caused, and the climate change, we have all these emergent infectious diseases. The new ones, and the ones that we already know, but before they were localized in more tropical areas, but now we are seeing them in colder climates. And of course, many of those have a pandemic risk. And yeah, as Max mentioned, bird flu is a really big concern nowadays. And then we have, because of the animal waste and the fecal of contamination from the intestines being burst when the animals are slaughtered, we have all this contamination in food, and we have food poisoning. And we have the antimicrobial resistance that is also a really serious threat on our health. And the situation is that more than 70% of the antibiotics sold nowadays worldwide are given to farm animals. And then last but not least, these are the consequences also that workers and communities from workers working at slaughterhouses, factory farms, the consequences on their individual health and on the communities, because they see an increase in violence, in crime, they have more mental health issues, injuries, and so on. So today I'm going to focus only on malnutrition, but this is, a taste of the whole picture. So again, is it really worth this system? So the World Health Organization defines the double burden of malnutrition as the coexistence of undernutrition along with overnutrition within individuals, household, populations, and across the life course. Overnutrition meaning obesity, overweight, and diet-related non-communicable diseases. And we are seeing this particularly in low and middle-income countries. So I will start with how this food system impacts undernutrition. So we are 8 billion humans in this planet. And sadly, more than 700 million, so 1 in 11 worldwide, are facing hunger every year. And the situation in Africa is worse. And around 9 million people die of hunger every year. And sadly, over the last few years, this has been increasing. And this is due because the economy, conflict, climate change, and this is really sad. But we often have one fact that is often overlooked, and is that we cannot feed 8 billion people, but we are feeding, Max said 100 billion. The number I had is a bit lower, so even more. more than 80 billion land animals every year. So that shows you how broken our food system currently is. And these are numbers from a study done in 2013. So we currently grow enough food worldwide to feed both in calories, so in energy, and in protein, because everyone is very, very concerned about protein. So to feed more than 10 billion people. But because we give more than 1/3 of these crops to the livestock, then we don't have enough for humans. And the system is extremely inefficient. Max talked about the energy, about the 10% of the energy. I have here the numbers for protein. So from 100 plant protein in the form of crops, we only get 43 grams of protein in the form of milk, or 40 grams of protein in the form of chicken, 35 grams of protein in the form of egg, and if we go to the red meat, that's even lower, so 10 grams of protein in the form of pork, and only 5 grams of protein in the form of beef. So, I mean, you will agree with me that this is not a really good investment, is it? So, I mean, why one of the main contributors to this is this outdated but very entrenched belief that we have that animal protein is superior to plant protein. However, studies have shown that animal protein intake is associated with premature death and disease. And here in this graph, this is a summary of a few studies that have looked into the association between red meat intake and death. And as you see, all of them agree that red meat intake, being unprocessed or processed, increase the risk of dying earlier. So these are two very interesting studies. They are very large studies. As you'll see, one has more than 100,000 participants followed for more than 2 decades. This is more than 400,000 participants, which was followed for 16 years. And they looked at what happened when animal protein intake was replaced with plant protein. And overall, with only 3% of the calories, from animal protein replaced with plant protein, overall, that reduced the mortality by 10%. And if we look into the individual animal products, we have that the worst is processed meat, followed by eggs, then red meat, and finally dairy, and poultry and fish. And here I want to highlight, because many times there is this idea that white meat, poultry, fish, they are healthy protein sources. And the question is, compared with what? If you compare it with red meat or processed meat, yeah, they may have a better profile health-wise. But if you compare them with veggies or with any plant-based food, I mean, they are not as healthy as we think. So a better source of protein are, for instance, legumes. This is a review of 30 studies, and this is a summary of their findings. So they found that regular legume intake, it lowers the cholesterol, it lowers the blood pressure and the cardiovascular risk, it reduces the inflammation and the oxidative stress, and those are very key underlying mechanisms that underlie any kind of chronic disease that we know nowadays. It also reduces cancer risk and mortality. It improves our hormone and metabolism. It supports keeping a normal weight and reduce the risk of obesity, and improves glycemic control and the risk of diabetes. So, I mean, I still don't know. You know, it's still quite shocking what's going on nowadays. So let's continue, because that is not all. So now we talk about our food system and overnutrition. So So worldwide, every year, 12 million people die from diet-related non-communicable diseases. So the main cause is cardiovascular disease, cancer, we have the second one, followed by type 2 diabetes. And 64% of these deaths are due to low intake of fruit, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, nuts, and seeds. And here, I mean, yeah, these are people who have enough to eat. So we are not talking now about foods undernutrition. We are talking people who have enough to eat, but they are not eating enough of these plant foods. And 60% of these deaths are due to high intake of red meat and dairy. So this is the key message that I want to emphasize today. So we are not dying because of lack of meat and dairy intake. We are actually dying and getting sick because of an excess intake of meat and dairy and because of lack of plant foods intake. So the situation in low and middle income countries, I mean, is becoming very serious because obesity and non-communicable diseases are exponentially increasing and becoming a serious health concern. Also, these countries, they have not been diseases are kind of new or newer than us. They don't have, the healthcare systems are not as prepared for that as ours. And one of the contributors is because they are changing their traditional plant-based diet with a Western type of diet. And studies repeatedly and consistently show us that a dietary pattern that is rich in plant foods, rich in fruits and vegetables, whole grains, legumes, nuts, and seeds, that reduces the risk of dying and reduces the risk of disease. On the other hand, a Western type of diet, which is high in red and processed meat, high in fat, dairy, high in refined grains and processed snacks, high in sugar and high fat products, increases risk and increases the risk of dying earlier. But not only that, I mean, diet is also a very powerful tool to treat disease. So if someone has already developed a chronic disease, by changing their diet to a plant-based diet, they can improve their health too. And these are a few things that the studies have shown. I mean, here I don't have time to go one by one for the sake of time, but yeah, this is just a list. So studies have been shown that a plant-based diet can be as effective as statins to treat high cholesterol. Plant-based diets also significantly reduce high blood pressure. They can arrest and revert heart disease. And I think that this is something that we don't pay much attention to. But in this photo, I don't know if you can see it. Can you see it? Well, yeah. So in the first one, this is a coronary artery. So this is one of the arteries that bring blood to the heart. And you can see in the first one, you can see this is very narrowed because of atherosclerosis. These are plaques made with cholesterol, fat, and so you can see the first one. And then this is one of Dr. Esselstyn's patients, one of the pioneers in researching plant-based diets, particularly in heart disease. And then a few years later, after adopting a plant-based diet, you can see how the artery opened. I mean, there is no medication nowadays that can do that, okay? Arteries nowadays are only opened with surgery or plant-based diet. So they can also treat diabetes, even reverse diabetes, treat early stage prostate cancer, and reverse mild cognitive decline. And this is a big thing. So what are the things that make plant foods so beneficial? So because they are packed of protected factors. They are full of fiber, they are rich in vitamins and minerals, antioxidants, phytonutrients, and anti-inflammatory compounds. And they are very low in pathogenic factors, so in factors that cause disease. So they have very low saturated fat. They have no dietary cholesterol. By the way, our body can make our own cholesterol, so we don't need to take cholesterol from external sources. They have no animal protein, which is also very inflammatory. They don't have products for our body. Well, I mean, plant-based food. With plant-based foods, our body cannot make TMAO, which is it's a kind of toxin and associated with chronic disease, and they don't have heme iron. That does not mean that plant foods have iron, but the type of iron that they have has a much better profile than animal iron, which is this heme iron. So, again, and I'm finishing now. This is the message I want you to take home, that we are not dying or getting sick because because of lack of animal foods. We are dying and getting sick because of an excess intake of animal food and because of lack of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, legumes, nuts, and seeds. And I want to leave you finally with the first slide because, I only talk about that corner, okay? But there is all these other health consequences that our current livestock-centered food system has on our health. So, thank you.